So one of the things that I do when I go out on the road is I talk about this element of leadership called the cube, and I did not make this thing up. The anecdotes are mine, the vignettes are mine, the concept I stole. It's a concept where every single person you know fits somewhere on this cube that we'll get to in a minute. I love this picture. I will probably use this picture till the day I retire because it does take me back to my squadron commander days, and I love it. And flying airplanes when I was good at it, and I just look good in that picture. So I will always use that picture. Next slide. So the cube is very, very technical. You'll see it has an X and a Y axis. That's about as technical as it gets. How many of you are like math or science majors? Engineers? So I see you right now, your brow is furrowed. And you're going to tell me that a cube has 6 sides and a cube is 3-dimensional. And I'm going to tell you, shut up. I'm going to tell you, get your own doggone briefing. Call it what you want. You're going to tell me that this is probably a parallelogram or something, maybe a square. No, it's a cube. Just because I said it is. It's my briefing. So everybody you know fits on this cube. You may think of an organization. I will tell you, you can look at your life this way, and every single person you know fits in here. And what we're going to do is identify them very quickly, and then see what we need to do for them, about them, and to them as leaders, and sometimes as wingmen. I will tell you that it works for everybody you know. However, do not try this on your spouse. I will not take any responsibility for that one. You're on your own if you try any of this with your spouse. All right, so you'll see it runs from low to high on both a performance scale and a potential scale. And that's very, very important as we follow through. Let me give you the first build, please. I build this one very quickly because everybody seems to know who these people are. High performers with high potential, your top 10%. More people think they're in that category than there truly can be. Most EPRs and OPRs tell you that about 90% of our United States Air Force is in the top 10%. And we actually believe the stuff that we read. We'll talk a little bit about the true top 10 percenters and what they need from you. But high performers with high potential. Because we have so many people in that category, we tend to deny the following one. Give me the next build. You can't have an organization, a team, a family dynamic where somebody's not struggling. Can't happen. There's a bell-shaped curve everywhere. Some organizations skew slightly to the right, but everywhere it exists. And if you say it doesn't, you're in denial. So the next build is solid citizen. Some people think that's a pejorative term and think that solid citizen is negative. No, it's not. If you're an organization that builds widgets, and you have a goal of building 100 widgets per day, how many widgets does a team of solid citizens build? 100. Will they give you 98? No, they're going to give you 100. If the production changes and they could go to 105, will you get 105? No. You ask for 100. You will get 100. You get 100 every day, consistently, without fail. If you have work hours of 7:30 to 4:30, what time does a solid citizen come to work? 7:30. What time do they go home? 4:20. Out the gate by 4:30. But between 7:30 and 4:20, what do? We work every single day without fail. Be careful how you set goals for your team of solid citizens. If they can produce 105, you better set the goal at 105. But if they can only produce 90, and you have a goal of 100, be careful of that one too. Because then they will start to question your leadership. That you're pressing them a little too hard. The first whine, accept it. After that, you need to find out what the real problem is. So that's an important group because they're how much of your organization? A lot. The other one's another big chunk. Give me the build. Newbies aren't all bad, and the newbies aren't all young either. A brand new 4-star might be a learner. Believe it or not, you go into a new role, and you have to learn how to. I didn't learn how to be a 3-star the second someone pinned it on my shoulder. You have to have a way to grow in the role. So you start off with low performance, but the potential is high because of what you bring to the table. But most people think of airman right out of basic, lieutenant right out of commissioning source. But it's deeper than that. It really can be just about anybody in your organization if you shift them around. Now, why is it important to understand who all these people are and what you do? Because you don't know which ones will end up being your stars. And this is a great story I like to tell. So Second Wing at Pope, 43rd Airlift Wing. I get there my second day. My predecessor had set up this exercise. I should have canceled it. But being the fine, arrogant wing commander that I was, I decided I'd been a wing commander before. I know how to do an exercise. I can do this. Now, the fact that I'd never flown the C-130, I just got checked out. The fact that I'd never been to Pope before, the fact that I didn't know anybody in the wing should have stopped me, but decided to have the exercise anyway. So here I am, Mach 4, underneath the table, and what walks past me was a pair of spit-shined flight boots. You remember those, the leather ones? No, you probably don't remember them because you've never seen them spit shine. So, the only one spit shine that I've ever seen were mine. And mine were in a set of rubber booties right then. And so I was like, who is this guy? And so as I eventually came out and doffed my gear and I started talking to him, he's a lieutenant colonel. And this lieutenant colonel was there in the CAT, we call it the CAT of Battle Staff, I can't remember at the time, whatever the organization was, and he was putting me through my paces. And I'm saying, this lieutenant colonel knows his stuff. And over the day and a half or so that we did this, I became more and more impressed. So impressed, in fact, that afterwards I went up and checked his record out and read up on it. And I said, wow, but why is this guy Chief of Stanaval? Chief of Stanaval is a big job. It's an important job, but I thought I saw more potential than that. He was a solid citizen, doing a good job in an important job, but really probably wasn't going to go past there. But then I needed a new Deputy Mission Support Group commander. Give me the next bill, please. So I take a high-performing, kind of seemingly low-potential guy, and I make him the Deputy MSG. And when I did that, he couldn't even spell MSG. Most flyers don't know who owns the fire department, where base housing, all that stuff. He didn't either. But give me the next bill. Within about 6 months, he was the best deputy group commander on the base. Now, if you notice, it doesn't come from the Deadwood category to learner to star. And you take a risk sometimes with moving people, but why would you move a solid citizen? Because sometimes they're in there because there hasn't been an opportunity or a way out. Some are there because they like it, they're good at it, and the organization needs them to be there. But every now and then, there's someone waiting for a chance to get to do something different. And different sparks them, and they go from solid to star. Now you have them identified. Now what do you do about them? What do you do for them? Let's start with the easy one, your stars. What do they need from you? Okay, so sometimes a star just wants to know they're a star. They don't want big accolades necessarily. They just kind of want, sometimes some of your really top performers just want you to give them more work to do. And then the fact that you give them more important work, they feel better about themselves. And then if every now and then you walk by them and go, that's all they need, right? So give me that bill. The important thing you do is you identify them, at least to yourself, and then have an honest feedback with them and tell them where they stand. But then after that, how do you give them a challenge that's going to get them to the next level? The last thing in the world you want to do is give a star nothing to do. They will ultimately leave you frustrated. There's several articles in Harvard Business Review that talk about leading kind of the alpha male, the alpha female. And you really do need to manage to keep them challenged. You can't pile too much on them, even though they may complain. You really can't. Because when you stop, they go, does he stop loving me? So it's an important group. Now let's go to the other end of the spectrum. I have probably taken advantage of this category several times in my career, but there was a book I read, author is Lencioni, Lenconi. The title of the first book in the series is Five Temptations of a CEO. And they go through 5 errors a CEO typically makes. And one of them is when you have underperforming people, whose fault is it? You initially think it's your fault. Well, you think it's their fault. And it may be their fault. But ultimately, if you've not set the expectation, if you've not given them the things they need to succeed, if you've not set a hard line for them to say, this is what I need for you to succeed, then it is your fault. And so once you've done all those things, clear your mind of any guilt and move on. Because there are 2 people in the organization that don't know that these people are underperforming. Who are they? Themselves and the supervisor or the commander. And so the rest of the organization is talking about them, not to them, and talking about you as their supervisor. Because they're saying you're either an idiot or you just don't care. So they can really tear an organization apart because everybody's talking about it. So you need to do something. And most of the time, if you bring them in and have an honest conversation with them, we don't bring bad people in our Air Force. An honest conversation clears things up. An example, so I'm the 62nd OG at McCord. We had a little bit of problem with late OPRs. And I had put an edict out there. I don't want any more late OPRs. You guys, squadron commanders, clean this mess up. There was one OPR that comes across my desk, and it's not just late. So you know there's an annual reporting period that surprises people, right? Because it happens annually. And so it had happened, and then a year after that, so the annual, then a year later, this report crosses my desk. And I've been in the job about 2 months, and I put my edict out there. So I've got to do something now, right? So I call in the individual, the supervisor, and I'm visualizing now because there's 1 person in a service dress, there's 2 people in a service dress, the supervisor and the squadron commander in a service dress in a brace in front of my office. And you know, when you get invited in and you're not told stand at ease, you know that one? You probably have never had that happen to you. So they're standing there at attention so that I can really talk to them well. And we're having a nice conversation, and I turned to the lieutenant, whose OPR it was, and I said, how much responsibility do you have in this thing being a year late? And he kind of waffles. I said, before you answer that, here's I'm going to give you the answer. A lot. You should never write your OPR, but you should have known you didn't have one. That you haven't had one in 2 years. So I said, Lieutenant, how are you doing? So I'd read his record. And he said, sir, I've struggled. And he had. He said, but I've started to recover. And now I think I've gone from about the bottom half to about the top 25% of my peers. I said, thank you very much, Lieutenant, you're dismissed. So I turned to the supervisor, Major, and I said this. I said, either you give the worst feedback known to man, or you're a liar. You tell me which one it is. Liar because you signed a piece of paper that said you gave this individual feedback. The report you finally gave me said that this person's a deadwood, bottom 10%. He believes he's in the top 10%. How does that happen? So we've got to get better at giving feedback, and some of it is just saying, you know, you're not cutting it. But I believe in you, and I think you can do it, but you're going to have to change something. And here's what I want you to change. And here's how long I'm going to give you to change it. And if you can't change it in this period of time, then we need to part ways. So now you get to the big part of the organization. And this is the easiest part, actually. You spend a lot of time talking about the other 2, but really the hard work goes in the next bit, but it's really easy. So what do the solid citizens need from you? 100 widgets a day, 7:30 to 4:20. What do they need? Give me the build. I need a volunteer. So in today's environment, there are people that believe that the thank you has to be pretty complex, and then there are others that think it can be really simple. The complex people believe it has to be hardware that costs a lot of money. The simple people believe it can be a tweet, a text. That is not a thank you. An email is not a thank you. No one saves an email for 20 years. I've seen notes that I wrote 20 years ago and hard copy, and I've seen them 20 years later because somebody saved it that long. You have notes you've saved a long time. That's a proper thank you. There's another one, and this one involves getting out from your desk and walking to someone. So I need a demo person here. So would you face me? Would you extend your right hand? Thank you. You may sit down. Nicely done. So how hard was that? Not hard at all. For as little as is done, you would think it was like the hardest thing in the world. That will get your solid citizens to work for you forever. Sincerity. So let's review it real quick, because some of you didn't quite catch it. First, I had to be in close proximity to him. So I had to be somewhere in his zip code. I actually looked him in the eye, and I uttered something that sounded sincere, and a thank you does it most times. It works. It works. All right, so what do your learners need from you? Chief Master Sergeant Curtis Rogers made me a better basketball player, but made me a better man and a better leader by showing me how to do it. And I thought for a long time he just made me improve my crossover dribble. He improved my jump shot. He made me a leader. I didn't get that for about 20 years after the fact. But that's how you spend time with someone, and you don't have a lot of it. But spending time with someone is the best way to get them from learner to star. Why do generals pick aide-de-camps, other than they're fun? Because you pick somebody that's worth the investment. All right, so the last build, go ahead. We seem to be shocked every year during PCS cycle. Because no one knows when we PCS people in the Air Force. Because when the new person shows up, their supervisor's not there, the sponsor's not there, there's no email account, there's no desk to sit at, there's no work to do, there's investing in preparing for the new people is important. Reading their record, getting them acclimatized to the organization is a big deal. So that is the cube, not a parallelogram, not a square, but the cube. Next slide. Because it gets down to this. If you're going to lead, next slide, you got to know how to lead, you got to be willing to lead, and you just got to lead. It's not hard. I've not told you anything you haven't heard before. It's just a matter of doing it consistently and taking the tough choices on as well.